there's a specific kind of coldness that hits you. It usually happens when the noise stops. Maybe you're lying in bed at 3 a.m., staring at the ceiling while your partner breathes softly. The house is silent. The street outside is empty. And suddenly, without warning, you feel it. Or maybe you're standing in a crowded grocery store, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, and you're holding a box of cereal, and for just a moment, everything feels absurd. The packaging, the music, the people shuffling past you like automatons. Or you're sitting at your desk at work, staring at a spreadsheet, and you realize you've been looking at the same cell for 5 minutes. Not thinking, just gone. Suddenly, the world feels thin, like someone pulled back a curtain you didn't know was there. The things you usually care about, your career trajectory, your social media metrics, your plans for next week, the argument you had with your friend, they suddenly look like cardboard props on a stage. Flimsy, arbitrary, meaningless. And underneath all of it, you feel something ancient and cold. You feel a sudden sharp realization that you are small, a fragile consciousness, a ghost trapped in a body made of meat and bone that is slowly breaking, floating on a rock in an infinite universe that doesn't know you and wouldn't care if it did. Most people call this anxiety. They tell you to take a deep breath, download a meditation app, change your diet, get more sleep, go to therapy, take a pill. They treat it like a malfunction, a bug in your operating system that needs to be patched. But a Norwegian philosopher named Peter Wessel Zapffe had a different name. He called it cosmic panic. And Zapffe believed something radical. He believed this isn't a disorder to fix. He believed it is the only honest moment you have all day. He argued that you feel this dread because you are too awake. You have momentarily seen through the elaborate illusions we build to stay sane. You've glimpsed the truth that most people spend their entire lives running from. In the next 40 minutes, we're going to stop running from that dread. We're going to name it. We're going to map its architecture. We're going to understand why it happens, why it's happening more now than ever before, and I'm going to show you why Zapffe believed that understanding your panic truly, understanding it is the only way to be free, not free from the dread, but free within it. Here's a question that sounds simple but isn't. Why are humans the only creatures that need a reason to live? Think about it. An eagle doesn't wake up and wonder if its life has purpose. A wolf doesn't suffer from a midlife crisis. A salmon doesn't swim upstream while questioning the meaningfulness of its existence. They just are. They are perfectly closed systems. Their biological imperatives match their environment perfectly. Hunger, reproduction, territory, survival. That's it. The equation is balanced. But humans? We are spiritually displaced. This is Zapffe's core thesis in his essay, The Last Messiah, written in 1933. He argues that human beings have what he calls an over-evolved intellect. We are like a radio that has been tuned to a frequency that doesn't exist. We have this massive, powerful capacity for meaning, for asking why, for projecting into the future, for imagining alternate realities, but we live in a universe that is fundamentally, brutally, indifferently meaningless. There is no cosmic narrative, no grand plan, no justice woven into the fabric of reality, just atoms obeying physics, entropy increasing, stars burning out. This creates what Zapffe calls a surplus of consciousness. We have more thinking power, more awareness than we actually need for survival. Our ancestors needed to track animals, recognize patterns, plan for winter. But somewhere along the evolutionary timeline, our brains kept growing. Our capacity for abstract thought exploded. And now we have all this extra cognition. And that extra power? that surplus consciousness, it turns inward. It begins to eat itself. Think of it like an engine. Most animals have engines that are perfectly calibrated. They run exactly as hot as they need to, but the human engine runs too hot. It generates more power than the system requires. And when an engine idles too high for too long, it starts to shake itself apart. That constant sense of dread you feel? That low-level hum of anxiety that you wake up with and go to bed with? That feeling that something is wrong even when objectively everything is fine? That's not a chemical imbalance. That's not a defect. That's simply the sound of your consciousness idling too high. It's the sound of a machine that has finished its evolutionary job, keep you alive long enough to reproduce, but can't turn itself off. It just keeps running. Analyzing. Questioning. Aware of its own mortality, aware of its own insignificance, aware that every achievement will be forgotten, every relationship will end. Every moment of happiness is temporary. You are a thinking animal that has become too good at thinking. And now you can't stop. Zapffe observed something else too. Something darker. He noticed that this panic isn't universal. It doesn't hit everyone at the same intensity. Some people seem immune to it. They go through life with what looks like genuine contentment, never asking the big questions, never feeling that 3 a.m. coldness. And Zapffe argued this isn't because they're smarter or healthier, it's because they've successfully suppressed their consciousness. They've managed to turn the volume down. They've built thick walls between themselves and the truth. The people who feel the panic most intensely? They're the ones whose walls are thinnest, the ones who are most awake, most aware, most honest. You're not broken. You're just undefended. So if this cosmic panic is so natural, if it's just the inevitable result of being a conscious animal in an indifferent universe, why aren't we all screaming in the streets every single day? Why do we manage to get out of bed, go to work, have conversations, make plans, fall in love, watch Netflix, argue about politics? Because, according to Zapffe, we spend every single waking second building 4 specific psychological walls to keep the truth out. These aren't conscious choices. You didn't sit down one day and decide to build them. They're automatic defense mechanisms, evolutionary pressure release valves. Without them, the species would have collapsed into paralysis long ago. Let me show you the 4 walls. And I want you to notice, really notice which ones you use most. Isolation, in Zapfe's framework, doesn't mean being alone. It means the systematic cluttering out of anything that reminds us of the void. It's a filter we place over reality to block out the existential frequencies. This is why we hate silence. Think about the last time you were in complete silence for more than 5 minutes. No music, no podcast, no TV in the background, no scrolling. Just you and your thoughts. How long did you last before you reached for something, anything to fill the space? We treat silence like a disease. We medicate it immediately. Background music in every store. Podcasts during every commute. Netflix auto-playing the next episode before the credits finish. We've engineered our entire civilization to ensure we're never alone with ourselves. Because when the noise stops, the questions start. Who am I? Why am I here? What happens when I die? Does any of this matter? Isolation means refusing to look at the abyss. We pretend it isn't there by systematically avoiding anything that might remind us it exists. We don't go to funerals unless we have to. We don't talk about death at dinner parties. We scroll past news about atrocities because they make us feel bad. We distract ourselves from our distraction. We isolate our awareness from the fundamental facts of existence, impermanence, mortality, cosmic insignificance, and as long as the filter holds, we feel okay. But sometimes, at 3 a.m., the filter fails. Anchoring is what we do when isolation isn't enough. We anchor our fluid, terrifying, groundless consciousness to a fixed point. We tell ourselves, this is who I am. This is what matters. This gives my life structure and meaning. The anchor could be your religion, your political identity, your career, your role as a parent, your fitness routine, your hustle mindset, your nationality, your trauma, your recovery, your brand. It doesn't matter what the anchor is. What matters is that it's fixed, solid, non-negotiable. As long as we believe the anchor is real, as long as we believe our identity is stable, and our values are absolute, we feel safe. We have a foundation. We know who we are. But here's the problem with anchors. They're arbitrary. You weren't born a Christian, or a Democrat, or an entrepreneur, or a vegan. You weren't born with a nationality, or a Myers-Briggs type. These are stories you adopted, or that were adopted for you to create the illusion of stability. And deep down, some part of you knows this. This is why people defend their anchors so viciously, why religious debates turn violent, why political disagreements feel personal, why criticizing someone's career feels like attacking their soul, because you're not defending an idea. You're defending the wall that keeps you sane. And what happens when the anchor drags? What happens when your religion stops making sense? When your political party betrays you? When your career plateaus? When your kids move out and you realize you don't know who you are without them? That's when the dread returns, stronger than before. Because now you've seen that the foundation was never real. This is the most common wall today, and the most powerful. Distraction isn't just entertainment. It's not just relaxing after work. It's a survival strategy. Zapffe described it as tethering our attention to impressions, keeping the mind constantly stimulated so it never has the chance to turn inward, never has the space to ask dangerous questions. We are living in the golden age of distraction. Our phones are engineered to be addictive. Social media algorithms are designed to maximize engagement, which is just a clinical term for keep you scrolling so you don't have to feel anything real. Video games have become second lives. Streaming platforms autoplay the next episode. Shopping has become frictionless. Every moment of potential silence has been monetized and filled. And we participate willingly, eagerly, because the alternative sitting with ourselves is terrifying. But here's what's insidious about distraction. It doesn't just block the panic. It erodes your capacity to feel anything deeply. The more you scroll, the less you can focus. The more you binge, the less you can sit with a single thought. Your attention span fragments. Your emotional range flattens. Everything becomes content. Even your own life becomes something you document for an audience, rather than experience directly. You're not just avoiding the void. You're becoming numb to everything. And when you finally stop, when the Wi-Fi cuts out, when your phone dies, when you're lying in bed at 3 a.m., the panic is waiting. And it's hungry. Sublimation is the highest wall, the most sophisticated defense, the most beautiful trap. It's what happens when you take the raw, overwhelming pain of cosmic panic and transform it into something aesthetic, something meaningful, something that feels transcendent. Art, music, philosophy, poetry, film, performance. This is where the existential dread doesn't get suppressed, it gets channeled. The artist looks at the void and says, "I will paint you." The musician hears the silence of the universe and fills it with sound. The writer feels the meaninglessness and creates meaning through story. The philosopher stares into the abyss and tries to map its dimensions. Zapffe himself was engaging in sublimation by writing The Last Messiah. He was turning his panic into philosophy. And here's what makes sublimation different from the other walls. It acknowledges the void. It doesn't pretend the abyss isn't there. It just makes the abyss beautiful. But even sublimation doesn't solve the problem. Because at the end of the day, the painting fades. The song ends. The book gets forgotten. The philosophy becomes footnotes. You've turned your suffering into something meaningful, but meaning itself is still something we invented. The universe still doesn't care. The void is still there, waiting. Patient, indifferent. Sublimation is the most elegant wall, but it's still a wall. So now you know the architecture of your prison: isolation, anchoring, distraction, sublimation. 4 walls, built by evolution, reinforced by culture, maintained by your own desperate need to stay functional. And for most of human history, they worked. But something's changed. Look at these images. The 1880s, Victorian England, Industrial Revolution in full swing, cities covered in soot, rigid social hierarchies, brutal working conditions. But they had something we don't. They had strong anchors. They had God, not just as a Sunday ritual, but as an unquestioned foundation. The universe had meaning because God gave it meaning. Death wasn't the end. It was a transition. Suffering wasn't random. It was part of a divine plan. They had empire. National identity that felt solid and eternal, clear hierarchies. Everyone knew their place, their role, their purpose. They had rigid social structures. You were born into a class, a family, a community. Your identity wasn't something you chose. It was something you inherited. And that stability, however oppressive, provided psychological security. Now look at 2026. We don't trust God. Religiosity is at an all-time low in the developed world. The churches are empty or converted into coffee shops. We don't trust institutions, not governments, not corporations, not media, not science, not academia. Every week there's a new scandal, a new betrayal, a new revelation that the people in charge are either corrupt or incompetent or both. We don't trust the future. Climate catastrophe looming. Economic instability. Political polarization. AI threatening jobs. Nuclear tensions. The sense that we're living through some kind of slow-motion collapse. And our social roles? They're fluid now. You can be anything. Which sounds liberating until you realize it means you have to constantly choose who you are. There's no default, no inheritance. You have to build your identity from scratch, and every choice feels arbitrary. And our distractions, they're so fast now, so intense, so numerous that they've lost their flavor. You can scroll for hours and feel nothing. You can watch an entire season in a day and remember none of it. The dopamine hits are smaller. The returns are diminishing. You need more stimulation to feel less. The walls are getting thinner. The blue light of your phone isn't a strong enough shield anymore. The podcast in your ears isn't loud enough to drown out the silence underneath. We are being forced collectively, culturally, generationally to stand face to face with the cosmic paradox of being a thinking animal in a silent, indifferent universe. And we have fewer tools to cope than any generation before us. This is why your generation, millennials, Gen Z, whoever's watching this, reports the highest levels of anxiety, depression, and existential dread in recorded history. It's not because you're weaker. It's because the walls are failing, and you can see through the cracks. So what do? If the dread is honest, if it's the only true response to our condition and the walls are failing, do we just give up? Do we embrace nihilism and stop trying? Do we accelerate toward extinction, as some antinatalists argue? Zapffe offers something different, something I'd call heroic pessimism. He says the solution isn't to build a better wall. The solution is to accept the tragedy, not as defeat, not as resignation, but as clarity. Here's the paradox at the heart of Zapffe's philosophy. When you stop trying to cure your anxiety, when you stop treating your existential dread as a disease that needs to be medicated away, something strange happens. The power of the panic fades. Not because the universe suddenly has meaning, not because death stops being real, not because you've found some cosmic answer, but because you've stopped fighting it. You realize you aren't broken. You're not malfunctioning. You're not failing at life because you feel the void. You are just a biological miracle, a thinking, feeling, conscious creature that was never meant to happen. Evolution didn't plan for you to be this aware. You're an accident, a beautiful, terrible accident, a glitch in the code that became self-aware. And once you accept that, once you really accept it, you stop demanding that existence justify itself to you. Zapffe's last Messiah isn't a savior who comes to rescue humanity. The last Messiah is the person who has the courage to stop the cycle of denial, to live without anchors, to look at the void and say, I see you, I know what you are, and I will live anyway, not because there's a reason to, but because I choose to, even if it's just to spite the silence. This is what Zapffe meant by the title of his essay. The last Messiah isn't someone who brings salvation, it's someone who has the strength to stop promising salvation, to stop pretending there's a way out, to live in full awareness of the tragedy, and to find a strange kind of freedom in that honesty. Does this solve the problem? No. Does it make you happy? Probably not. But it makes you awake. And there's a kind of dignity in that, a kind of power in refusing to lie to yourself anymore. You're not going to find cosmic meaning, but you can find small meanings, temporary meanings, human scale meanings, the taste of coffee in the morning, the way light looks through trees, a conversation with a friend that feels real, a moment of creating something, a moment of understanding. These don't justify existence, but they also don't need to. They're enough because you decide they're enough. So here's where we are. This dread you feel, that 3 a.m. coldness, that grocery store vertigo, that sudden sense that everything is thin and temporary, it's not your enemy, it's your compass. It's the part of you that knows there is more to existence than just consuming and surviving and performing. It's the part of you that refuses to be fully domesticated by capitalism, by distraction, by the shallow narratives we're fed. It's the part of you that's still awake, and yes, that's painful. Yes, it's exhausting. Yes, some days you wish you could just be like everyone else, blissfully unaware, happily distracted, confidently anchored. But you can't. And maybe that's okay. I want to hear from you. In the comments below, tell me about your 3 a.m. moments. When do the walls fail for you? What does your cosmic panic feel like? Is it quiet or loud? Does it come with images, thoughts, physical sensations? When does the dread creep in for you? Let's make this comment section a place where we can be honest about the things the rest of the world tells us to hide, where we can stop performing optimism and just tell the truth about what it feels like to be awake. You're not alone in this. That's not a platitude, it's a fact. Thousands of people watching this video right now feel exactly what you feel, and there's something powerful in naming it together. If you want to go deeper, if you want to understand how this cosmic panic leads to the question of whether or not we should bring new life into this world, you need to watch my video on the tragedy of procreation. I'll link it in the description and the end screen. Because once you see the void, once you feel the panic, the question becomes, should we create more conscious beings? Should we pass this burden on? That's where this philosophy goes next, and it's darker than anything we've talked about today. Zapffe had a metaphor I think about a lot. He said humanity is like the Irish elk, an extinct species that evolved massive, beautiful antlers. The antlers were magnificent. They helped the males compete and attract mates. They were an evolutionary advantage until they weren't. The antlers kept growing, became too heavy, too cumbersome. Eventually, the Irish elk couldn't lift its head, couldn't navigate through forests. The very thing that made it successful became the thing that made it extinct. Our consciousness is our antlers, magnificent, powerful, but maybe too much. You are an Irish elk with antlers made of stars. It's okay if your head feels heavy. I'll see you in the silence.